Indoctrination's mind control power is easily the scariest weapon the Reapers have in the Mass Effect trilogy. But what if I told you that there's a darker form of indoctrination that was never explained to us, but rather hidden in plain sight? Indoctrination isn't just related to Reaper proximity. The other way of indoctrination is one of the darkest secrets in the trilogy, and after Shepard died the first time, the Reapers were likely going to use this secret to completely control our commander. Let's dive into Harbinger's ultimate plan for Shepard, how the elusive man gained indoctrination, and what these mysterious floating spheres have to do with the Reaper's darkest secret. First up, the spheres. Countless characters were indoctrinated throughout the trilogy, from Saren to a bunch of minor characters and even the elusive man himself. In most cases, these characters were mind-controlled through literal Reaper proximity, like Matriarch Benezia's proximity to Sovereign. However, in other cases, just being in the vicinity of Reaper artifacts was enough to fully control them, like we saw in the Arrival DLC. Whenever Reaper proximity comes into play, a person's individual resistance to mind control and how long the person is subjected to the Reaper or artifact are the most important factors. This is why we saw some people become indoctrinated fairly quickly, while others like Shepard could be exposed countless times, but still resist indoctrination. Harbinger's ultimate plan for Shepard was likely related to their unusual resistance, which is why they frequently said things like this.
One day your body will fall, Shepard. We will take it for our purposes.
We'll go over why Harbinger desperately wanted Shepard's body later on. Now usually, indirect Reaper indoctrination was solely through Reaper artifacts, like Object Rho in the Arrival DLC. However, there was another indirect way, albeit much more obscure, which was revealed in Mass Effect 2. During the Project Firewalker mission on Kopis, Shepard came across a mysterious silver sphere, which emitted a familiar droning sound. In this mission, Shepard was tasked to find missing researchers who were being pursued by Geth. And on Kopis, you can find datapads and recordings of these researchers, which reveal the truth about what this sphere can do.
Dr. Aloy must have been indoctrinated by the Reapers. I found him sending our data to a Geth ship. It's too late for me. They're still in my head, stealing my thoughts. I can't keep them out. I've got no choice but to destroy this relic. And myself.
The spherical relic at the end of the mission is how the Reapers indoctrinated all the researchers on Kopis. But here's the wild part. Even though this relic is used for indirect Reaper indoctrination, its origins are actually Prothean. The initial scan of Kopis detects Prothean artifacts on its surface, and after the mission is complete, Shepard receives an email from Project Firewalker also calling the relic a Prothean artifact. So what's going on here? Why did a Prothean artifact emit a clear Reaper drone and cause Reaper indoctrination? The really murky answer to that is probably because the Protheans weren't the first to develop these types of spheres. It was actually the Leviathans. When Shepard first embarks on the Leviathan DLC, they come across a similar sphere right away. They witness a research assistant involuntarily shoot Dr. Bryson, and lo and behold, a colorful sphere was in the vicinity. When Shepard speaks to the Leviathans, they reveal that these colorful spheres are a Leviathan creation called fragments, which allow for complete control over others. Once affected, these Thrall races would fully obey the Leviathans without any recollection of being controlled, which is how they took control over the creepy workers on Mojave. Another purpose of these fragments was to study races, allowing the Leviathans to remain in the shadows. So basically, these fragments are capable of both observation and mind control, which is very similar to the Prothean relic from earlier. However, there is still the question of why Prothean relics cause indoctrination in the first place. Luckily though, we were able to get some answers about the relic when Shepard directly asked a Prothean themselves. And here's what Javik had to say.
We've uncovered quite a few Prothean ruins. Were you observing our ancestors?
Before the war, we cultivated species who showed potential. Eventually, you would have been offered a choice to join the Empire. But when the Reapers attacked, we ceased all study. We hoped they would see you as too primitive to harvest.
Javik, just like the Leviathans, used the word study when describing the Prothean relic. So even though not much is known about the Silver Spheres, I'm going to assume that the Protheans built their own relics based on the ones the Leviathans made. Since the Leviathans regarded themselves as the first ever species in the galaxy, the Protheans likely came across their fragments as they began forming their galaxy-wide empire. Upon finding the fragments, it wouldn't be a stretch for the Protheans to create spheres of their own, with similar observation powers, in order to figure out if races were ready to join their empire. However, Javik didn't mention that these relics were used for mind control, and to my knowledge, the Protheans do not possess this type of ability. So the answer to our original question is probably this. The silver relics are definitely Prothean in origin and made for observation purposes, because Javik confirms this when directly asked. However, since the Protheans likely built them based on the Leviathan's fragments, which had mind control capabilities, the Reapers likely took advantage of this similarity for their own purposes. The Reapers probably repurposed the Prothean relics as another means of indoctrination, which explains why we clearly heard Reaper droning coming from a Prothean relic. And we didn't just see this Prothean relic and Reaper connection only once. The very first discoverable Prothean relic was actually in Mass Effect 1, and it's with this relic that we saw the first glimpse of the Reaper's dark indoctrination secret. The mission for unlocking the first Prothean relic has the most convoluted requirements in this series. Before you find the planet Elitania, where the relic is located, you first have to finish 2 missions related to the consort Sha'ira. After dealing with the complaining Elcor and the pining Turian, Sha'ira will eventually give you a trinket, saying this.
What is it?
A small mystery. I've never learned its use or purpose, but I sense it is time for me to pass it on.
We'll discuss what object the mysterious trinket could be, and how it relates to Shepard's potential return in the next Mass Effect later on. For now though, let's go over how this trinket unlocks the most unique sequence in Mass Effect ever. When Shepard uses the trinket to interact with the Prothean artifact on Elitania, instead of a scene playing, it's presented to us purely in written form. The scene begins with Shepard noticing a small irregular slot in the underside of the artifact, which they place the trinket gained from Sha'ira into. Then, in a burst of white light, things get really trippy. It says, "Your senses slowly return as you wake from a deep sleep. You are not far from the caves you share with the others of your tribe. There is a pain and a small lump in the back of your skull, as if a chip of flint has been forced under the surface of the skin. A sound draws your attention upwards, where a strange creature hovers high above you. It has no head and no wings, yet somehow it flies. It is a beast of shining silver, hanging motionless in the sky like a cloud. You sense it is watching you, studying you. Most likely, what we're reading about is the memory of a very early human ancestor, and there's clearly a Reaper observing them." It continues, "You shake your spear at it in anger, and the creature rises up quickly until it disappears from view. You fall into the familiar patterns of life. Each time you rise from sleep, there is the sensation that you are not alone, that some other is with you, sharing all you see, hear, and feel. At these times, your hand goes to the strange lump at the back of your skull, and you remember the silver creature in the sky. This is very crucial, which we'll analyze in a bit. The memory goes on. The air grows colder, winter falls. It is on one of these long hunts that the strange bird returns. You hear it before you see it. Its call a deafening roar as it descends from above, swooping down on you. A single great eye opens on the underbelly, a glowing red orb. You try to run, but a finger of red light extends from the eye and engulfs you, and all goes black again. This is likely showing the hunter being found by a roaring Reaper before getting killed by the Reaper's red beam. Interestingly, the scene ends with Shepard actually misunderstanding what they saw. Shepard ruminates that they had seen the memories of a Cro-Magnon hunter, captured by an implanted Prothean data recorder. They went on to question how long the Protheans studied the primitive humans. However, for one of the only times in the trilogy, Shepard is completely wrong in their reasoning. Assuming Shepard was correct about the hunter being from the Cro-Magnon era, that would mean the memory we viewed was from 35,000 to 45,000 years ago. However, it's widely known that the Protheans were wiped out 50,000 years ago. Also, during Javik's conversation with Shepard on the Prothean relic's purpose, he mentioned that when the Reapers attacked, the Protheans ceased all study of the primitive humans. So that means there's no way the Protheans can be involved in this memory, because they were already wiped out long before the hunter existed. However, with this, we now have another major question. Why was a Prothean data recorder in the skull of this hunter, despite there not being any Protheans around? The likely answer is tied to the Reaper in the memory. In this scene, the hunter said there was a lump at the back of their skull, and that whenever they felt an other watching what they saw, they remembered the silver creature in the sky. So likely, what the memory showed was this. The Cro-Magnon hunter wasn't implanted with a memory recorder by a Prothean. They were probably implanted by a Reaper, which is why they awoke with a feeling of flint under their skin and a Reaper hovering directly in front of them. A different hunter nearby was probably indoctrinated into helping the Reaper put the implant in. So once again, the Reapers likely repurposed a Prothean invention, in this case a data recorder, for their own nefarious purposes. And we finally figured out the origins of what the Prothean spheres were used for. Not just for observation like Javik said, but also a way to input data recorders to relive the memories of those who had been implanted. As a quick aside, I think the trinket Sha'ira gave to Shepard was likely the literal data recorder in the hunter's skull, but that's just a theory. Back to the main discussion, we have to follow the thread of these implanted data recorders used by the Reapers, because it's these types of implants that are at the heart of their dark indoctrination secret. Let's tackle what these implants have to do with the Elusive Man's obsession with control and what Harbinger's ultimate plan for Shepard really was. To do that, we have to chat about Saren. Before Shepard met Saren, the Turian had spent a very long time in the proximity of Sovereign, the first Reaper we met in Mass Effect 1. Through this proximity, Saren eventually became indoctrinated. However, after meeting Shepard on Vermeer, they convinced Saren that Sovereign is causing his complete indoctrination, which is where the mysterious implants from the hunter's memory return. After Vermeer, Sovereign sensed that Saren's conviction was faltering, so it did the same thing the Reaper in the memory did, but on an entirely different level. In the memory, the hunter was simply implanted with a data recorder in their skull, but Saren was implanted with Reaper cybernetics throughout his entire body, completely eliminating his free will to Sovereign. In this way, just like with the Prothean spheres, these Reaper cybernetics took the Prothean data implants to an entirely new level, making it the ultimate form of Reaper indoctrination. It's a true testament to Saren's willpower that despite being implanted with cybernetics, he could potentially resist Sovereign and end his own life during Endgame. Wildly, these messed up cybernetics are why Saren's body becomes reanimated, becoming the final boss in Mass Effect 1. In a really dark twist, even after the death of the person implanted, Reapers can still control the subject. This form of indoctrination is easily one of the darkest secrets the Reapers have, which makes it wild that we never got a full explanation on how it exactly works. However, there is still one darker secret that the Reapers wanted to keep to themselves at all costs, and we saw inklings of their final secret with Harbinger's ultimate plan for Shepard. This wasn't covered in the trilogy, but when Shepard died the first time and fell to Alkera, it wasn't Liara that eventually found them frozen on that planet. The comics reveal that Shepard was first discovered by the original Yogg Shadow Broker's agents. Eventually, Liara was hired by the Elusive Man to steal Shepard's body from the Shadow Broker, who was going to sell it to the Collectors. The Collectors in the comics are clearly under Harbinger's control, the Reaper that frequently controlled them throughout Mass Effect 2. The main takeaway from Shepard's recovery is that Harbinger desperately wanted their body, but luckily was thwarted by Liara. And after hearing a few lines directly from Harbinger, it's easy to guess why they wanted our commander.
Relinquish your form to us. Your intact body is desirable, Shepard, but not mandatory. You fight your own rebirth. One day your body will fall, Shepard. We will take it for our purposes.
Harbinger clearly wanted Shepard's body to bend them to the Reaper's will, which means if Liara didn't recover Shepard's body, our commander would have likely been implanted with cybernetics similar to Saren, becoming a pawn to the Reaper's ultimate form of indoctrination. But the crazy part is that despite Liara's efforts, the Elusive Man might have implanted Shepard anyway. During the Lazarus Project, it's canon that Shepard is partially rebuilt with synthetics, which the Catalyst confirms.
Even you are partly synthetic.
So this got me thinking, what if Shepard was given a data recorder in their skull too? We would literally not know, but it could serve as a means for Shepard's memories to be recorded, which might be very convenient if they do return in the next Mass Effect. But I won't go into that theory here. For now, let's tackle how the Reaper's final secret was eventually unlocked by Cerberus and the Elusive Man. The one and only time Shepard is controlled via indoctrination is when the Elusive Man forced them to shoot Anderson at the end of Mass Effect 3. How did the Elusive Man gain these terrifying abilities that up until this point was limited to the Reapers? The answer lies in the research performed by Miranda's father, Henry Lawson. Henry worked for Cerberus to uncover how Reaper indoctrination controlled husks. Through this research, Cerberus eventually managed to create Reaper-grade neuronal implants that enhanced human physiology at the cost of indoctrinating the subject. The Cerberus soldier on Mars that looked strikingly similar to a husk is proof of Henry's actions. As Henry's research escalated, he began to look for a way to control the Reapers themselves. However, his facility on Horizon was attacked by the Reapers, halting the research process. The fact that the Reapers, during the most crucial part of the war, decided to annihilate Horizon's research facility proves that they wanted to hide the truth behind their darkest secret. That truth being that by using Reaper-based cybernetics, other races can replicate indoctrination, which is exactly what Henry discovered. And with this discovery, the first human with indoctrination powers was born, which was the Elusive Man. The Elusive Man's face in the last sequence of the game shows his Reaper nanotechnology implants, which gifted him the power of indoctrination. However, these powers came at a great cost. Despite Henry's extensive research, when Shepard spoke with the Catalyst, they revealed that the Elusive Man's bid for control over the Reapers would have failed because they already controlled him.
So the Elusive Man was right after all.
Yes, but he could never have taken control, because we already controlled him.
So by the year 2186, human indoctrination of other humans was technically possible. However, the cost was that the subject themselves would also become indoctrinated by the Reapers. But what if the Reapers were no longer the bad guys, or even completely destroyed? Would they willingly share the secrets of how to perfect this indoctrination technology further? Since the next Mass Effect's teases point to a Milky Way return, and potentially could take place in the year 2190, will human indoctrination be possible in the next game? After 4 years, could Cerberus have perfected the Reaper's final dark secret and share this newfound power with the rest of humanity? If you chose control, would Shepard's consciousness share more knowledge of Reaper indoctrination, unlocking even more secrets? If indoctrination does return in the next game, then it would be a fascinating continuing thread, especially if you chose control or synthesis. During the war, the Reapers clearly had a lot to hide. But would you believe that despite their dark secrets, they were actually right? Not about Reaper implants, and certainly not about harvesting the Milky Way, but they were probably right about the inevitable looming war between organics and synthetics. Watch this video next to see how the next Mass Effect's new N7 might prove that the Reapers were actually right. See you there!